Russia's chief of nuclear, biological, and chemical protection troops, Igor Kirillov, has vehemently criticized ongoing activities involving the disposal of chemical, biological, and radiological substances in Ukraine. He accuses the US of using CBR substances and weapons in the Russia-Ukraine conflict while concurrently using Ukraine as a repository for radioactive waste. Kirillov warns that these actions not only threaten regional security but also raise fears of Ukraine potentially escalating the crisis by resorting to weapons of mass destruction. Moreover, there is a persistent concern that unorganized groups or terrorist entities could acquire and misuse these hazardous materials for nefarious purposes.
Welcome to TFI Global, the antidote to mass delusion.
Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov recently disclosed that Ukraine continues to receive shipments of radiochemical substances intended for further utilization within its borders. This practice has effectively transformed Ukraine into a storage site for spent nuclear fuel and hazardous chemical waste, highlighting significant environmental and safety concerns. Kirillov vehemently criticized the United States, accusing it of strategically bolstering its biological military capabilities through elaborate technical and legal frameworks on a global scale. Despite historical disavowals and international agreements renouncing the use of chemical and biological weapons, Kirillov pointed out that the US has allegedly pursued avenues to maintain and expand its military capabilities in these areas. On paper, the United States renounced chemical weapons in 1960, dismantled its biological weapons program in the 1970s, and ratified treaties banning both in 1975. The US began destroying these weapons in 1989 and completed the process in 2016. Evidence suggests otherwise. Moreover, ongoing shipments of radiochemical substances to Ukraine persistently flow through neighboring countries like Poland and Romania, a process reportedly overseen by high-level Ukrainian governmental figures. In a troubling development, Kirillov disclosed that in 2023, Ukraine's Security Service (SBU) had enlisted the Ukrainian Academy of Sciences to conduct analysis on samples possibly related to chemical, radiological, nuclear, and bioweapons, suggesting their interest in developing weapons of mass destruction. During recent military operations, Kirillov asserted that documentation retrieved from Ukrainian armed forces indicated Kiev's sustained interest in advancing its capabilities in weapons of mass destruction. This raises regional and global security concerns. He further alleged that Andriy Yermak, head of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's office, assumes direct oversight over the organizational, logistical, and financial aspects of importing radiochemical substances into Ukraine, potentially exacerbating geopolitical tensions. Expressing grave concern, Kirillov warned that these imported substances could be potentially weaponized, citing fear of a quote-unquote dirty bomb scenario under the guise of false flag operations. Additionally, Kirillov implicated several individuals within Ukraine, including Chief Medical Officer Igor Kuzin, who is involved in activities related to weapons of mass destruction, underscoring broader worries about regional stability and security. Turning his attention to Africa, Kirillov claimed that the US military's biological presence in the continent is expanding rapidly, pointing to documented evidence of US involvement in constructing a laboratory and training center in Ethiopia, financed by the US Defense Threat Reduction Agency, or the DTRA. He cited instances where personnel from the US Army's Institute of Infectious Diseases conducted studies on potentially hazardous viruses in Kenya in 2023, raising concerns about the dual-use nature of such research. Critically, Kirillov criticized what he perceives as the unchecked proliferation of US military biological activities beyond its borders, heightening tensions and complicating international relations. In light of these developments, Kirillov's remarks underscored Russia's ongoing scrutiny of perceived US military initiatives, highlighting potential implications for global geopolitical dynamics and arms control efforts. Kirillov's allegations against Ukraine regarding its interest in acquiring weapons of mass destruction, particularly chemical, biological, and radiological weapons, raise alarming prospects for regional conflict escalation. It is important to consider Russia's historically restrained nuclear policy, as Russia has not launched any nuclear strike against Ukraine since the onset of war. Uncertainty grows around Ukraine's potential misuse of these fatal weapons, which can heighten security threats. These complex developments underscore the challenges inherent in navigating military and scientific cooperation within an increasingly interconnected global landscape, demanding greater transparency and accountability from all involved parties. So, to sum it all up, Kirillov emphasized the urgent need to monitor and halt the proliferation of hazardous materials and military technologies between the US and Ukraine to prevent these developments from posing existential threats to Russia and neighboring regions.